Cheers, guys. Welcome back to what is not only the first episode of the brand new VR show, but as your host, Epix, welcome back to frickin' Gaming Friday, that most blessed and holy of days. Gaming Friday, for those of you not in the know, is an important time. It's a time to commiserate with friends, with family, hell, with the stranger on the street. Knock out a board game or two. Maybe it's a card game. Maybe it's poker. Maybe it's Magic the Gathering. There's no rules. And that's the only rule for a Gamin' Friday. That there are none. Guys, anything counts. It's all about the harmony and the social aspect of gaming. So what better night than to come back with this show? So if you got questions, and I've been getting asked an awful lot of questions since the decision to bring back the show, chances are it's probably been answered in the monstrosity known as the 1 hour and 20 some odd minute live stream. That's now just over a month old. I get into all of the nitty gritty. So if you're curious, you have a question, chances are it's been answered there. Haven't indexed it yet. I will. It's going to make that process easier. But with that said, guys, so first up, like I said, it is Gaming Friday. That deserves another cheers. Cheers. Hope you guys are having a good one so far. There has been a lot of activity in the VR scene over these last few months. The usual stuff. Lots of positives, lots of negatives, and of course, the story of stories that never dies. Whither VR is it dead? But we're going to save that for the rant. We are going to start out with the VR Roundup segment and catch up on some VR current events. Since we are off camera, guys, what a perfect opportunity to get this one off my chest. An admission that I was wrong. Not only was I wrong, I was woefully inaccurate. I am speaking about Xbox VR. The thing that wasn't and likely won't be. Microsoft's Mike Nichols stating officially that they do not have any plans specific to Xbox consoles in VR or MR, and that as it relates to Xbox, their focus is going to remain on experiences that you'd play on your TV and ultimately making those experiences more broadly. Next up on VR Roundup, Arizona Sunshine Deadman DLC. That's been released. Was pushed back to this month, well, finally seeing the light of day. That, according to not just a Facebook posting on the company's official Facebook page, but many people who are enjoying the content. Still one of my favorite VR games, personally. Capcom announcing that they are not thinking about VR support for the Resident Evil 2 remake. To me, guys, a huge not just shame, but missed opportunity, because Resident Evil VR easily in mine and many other people's top 5 VR experiences all time. Hopefully they have a change of mind at some, future date, but for now, sadly, no VR support for Resident Evil 2, the remake. Next, there are an estimated 54 million Steam users with VR-ready GPUs. That is up from an estimated 25 million in 2017, 13 million in 2016, effectively doubling on an annual basis. What is obvious in that it didn't occur in parallel to this is a doubling of virtual reality growth. But that makes sense. However, the potential for more VR units being pushed out there and adopted by people as a piece of technology that they'd want in their homes and on their heads, it still looks positive. It just means there's that much bigger of a foundation. We're still caught in a bit of a funk, and I will get into that during the rant some more to kind of explain that, not all is doom and gloom like it looks like. Oculus announced its Oculus Go Business Edition for $300 US, the 64 gig Business Edition costing $50 more, roughly, than the consumer version, and yet feature-wise, it is almost identical, but with a different commercial warranty and charger plugs for the world's various receptacles and power configurations. And now some good news. According to Valve, monthly active VR users on Steam, as with GPU or VR-ready GPUs, is also up. Valve estimating that active VR users on Steam are up 160% year over year. Now, doing some quick math, reporter Ben Lang over on Road.to VR was able to estimate there's approximately 611,000 active VR HMDs connected to Steam over the course of the previous month of June. Still far from an active million per unit that I am sure Vive and Rift teams would absolutely kill for, a number that Sony was able to cross over into back in 2017. But again, not all is doom and gloom. We will definitely tackle that at the end of the show. Still on the topic of Valve, Valve also released a best of 2018 VR charts, similar to the one that they released last year. It's split into those various tiers. They've got the platinum tier, followed by gold, silver, and bronze. Now, in the platinum tier, you kind of find some titles you would expect to be there. The aforementioned Arizona Sunshine, for example, Fallout 4 VR, Skyrim VR. Guys, if there was a game that dragged me back, it was Skyrim VR. We'll talk about that after. But you also see some titles like Budget Cuts. Now, I do find it interesting that a title like Elite Dangerous isn't here, but considering it's not an actual full VR game, but rather a game that has VR support, it does make some sense. Switching over to Carnage Chronicles, an early access title from Nordic Trolls, which now has a cooperative mode that I'm really looking forward to trying with somebody. Carnage Chronicles, a game that I featured on the channel many months back now. I believe it was the summer of 2017 when we played that. Loved the game at the time, was aware of some updates that unfortunately I wasn't able to get to before I went on hiatus, but we will absolutely revisit that this time around, hopefully in cooperative mode. Disney Animation Studios debuting its first VR short film. They're going to launch this as a demo at the SIGGRAPH 2018 venue. The title is called Cycles, and it follows a single family in their home and the various exploits the family has to deal with whilst residing there. On the PlayStation VR side of the equation, Sony releasing a first-party VR platformers. This is a pending release, hasn't been released yet. It's going to be called Astro Rescue Mission. It's going to launch in October, and devs estimate about 26 levels in total at a clock-in time of roughly 8 to 10 hours to complete. Definitely a title to look forward to. All right. So let's dig a little bit deeper, guys, and get into some nittier, grittier VR stuff. We have the CTO of Oculus himself, John Carmack, indicating that a pet project of his that he's been working on for the last couple of years is ready to see the light of day. This, pretty damn impressive in the sense that his technique is going to allow developers to make 5K 3D 360-degree VR experiences on, get this, portable VR units like the Oculus Go and, of course, the Gear VR. Now, if you're a little skeptical, as I was initially, there is a demo that was also released to give you a little bit of the flavor for what this is capable of. It's called Henry, and it runs at 60 frames per second on pretty average hardware, but has the quality, guys, of like a fully rendered scene. Only the entire 5K master has essentially been resampled to 2K by 2K and done in such a way that stuff like pivoting, which was problematic in the past with techniques like this, well, they no longer cause, jitters and judders. You can now pivot and smoothly have your scene rotate with the pivot, which is fantastic. So check that out. Again, the demo called Henry. And if you're just curious on the technical aspects of it, Carmack has a lot more detail up on his blog, which I will put the link for in the description below. Ubisoft has pushed out the long-awaited DLC for the Rift and the Vive for the title Star Trek Bridge Crew. Now, in this, you get to experience Star Trek The Next Generation, affectionately known by the acronym STNG, the Enterprise D. You get to do battle with Romulans. It even includes a couple of new modes of gameplay. You've got Patrol, which lets you roam around kind of that free-roaming galaxy of the first that was done through what was called ongoing missions. That continues, but with more content available for it. And of course, a second mode called Resistance, which, as you can guess, has to do with the Borg. I love the idea of this one. Still haven't had a chance to try it. Essentially, it's a cat and mouse simulation where you, as a Federation captain, have to do battle with a Borg cube. Now, your first few encounters with this cube, well, you can imagine how they probably go. Not too well for you or your crew. However, there are 3 prototype ships that the Federation had under experimental programs that are basically designed to tackle Borg cubes. Well, they've gone missing. Your job is to secure the data of those ships via the components which are out there somewhere. Get all 3 and you're ready to kind of meet the Borg on their own terms. So all in all, a lot of stuff to do in this new expansion. I still never got an opportunity to do much on the first one. Well, let's just say my appetite has definitely been whetted for this update. When it comes to the screen door effect in virtual reality, individuals, have different levels of tolerance for that. Take a dead pixel, for example. Some people can live with them. Me, once I've been made aware of a dead pixel, I can find it, from the other side of the house. I can't stop thinking about it. I get obsessed. I can't stop staring at it. It ruins movies for me completely. It's that bad. I don't have quite the same issue with screen door effect. Some people do, and it kills the immersion for them. Well, one way to tackle screen door effect, which is basically the ability to see the hardware pixels that make up the image that you're seeing within your virtual reality head-mounted display. The natural way to tackle SDE, or screen door effect, is to simply ratchet up the resolution. Take, for example, the early 90s HMDs, playing System Shock at 320 by 200. They were absolutely pixelicious messes. Fast forward, we've got the 720p units of, the Rift that were sent out, the launch 1080p ones, and every step along the way we've seen the screen door effect minimized somewhat, but never completely removed. Maybe the person that noticed them at 720 stopped noticing them at 1080p, but guaranteed there's still people who notice it at 1080p, and there's still going to be people at 4K, etc., etc. That's one way. In other words, you've got a given bit of screen real estate. Let's assume it's a 2-inch wide LCD panel from Samsung that's powering your Vive or your Rift. When you up the resolution on that same amount of graphical real estate, you're in effect adding more pixels. There's more pixels on that screen in the same amount of space, i.e., you've increased the pixel count per inch. Well, a company called JDI is targeting that specifically head on, not just through real estate or upping the resolution, but physically. creating denser pixel arrays on the screen technology. And really, it's going to be that plus the resolution and some other cool technologies like foveated rendering with proper eye tracking, all of that working in harmony together, the synergy of that's going to allow for crazy high resolutions that are super lifelike with screen door effect almost not being a factor. I say almost because guaranteed there's going to be somebody somewhere who still sees it. So fantastic work from JDI, upping the 800 pixels per inch to just over 1,000 with their latest technology. Very freaking cool. When it comes to VR peripherals, guys, we're not off the hook with creating the fugly. VR is just as guilty as any other segment of the tech industry for creating ugly. And look, you don't have to go back further than monstrosities like this to realize VR doesn't get itself off the hook in the aesthetics department. I mean, look at this or this. Now, for other companies, it can be difficult to just be original. Maybe fugly's not their problem, but being original is. Now, to me, that's kind of how I view the folks at Pimax. Not so much with the HMD technology, which, they kind of took their own angle on it when you compare it to the IMAX type units, which also have crazy field of views. I'm talking more about the controllers, which, if you look at the first few iterations, were clearly Vive inspired, right? You get to the last iteration, and I mean, the ones in between, guys, they looked like melted globs of plastic, like some weird touch wand hybrids that, had been melted together and the final molding was never realized. It just kind of cooled into this, ugly lump. That's kind of how I view the Pimax controllers. The latest iteration, very touch influence. It's almost like they've gone full circle. Vive with touch, just kind of touchy. And this is where we ended up, which is a shame. But hey, at the end of the day, we're not staring at these things. We judge them mostly by how they feel, not the aesthetics. How they feel and how functional they are. And for many of us, that means we prefer the touch controller over the Vive wand, for example. I love my Vive, but for most things, I prefer the touch controller. If it's waving swords around or, some other type of devices within that game, yeah, the Vive wand does on occasion come out on top. The Pimax, it's going to boil down to, it's obviously not aesthetics, but functionality and comfort. And I only bring this up because they were the ones to throw down the gauntlet and say to the world that they followed this intensive design process. Really, they looked at other controllers and tried to make something that was kind of hybrid of all of the above. But hey, at the end of the day, again, if it's functional, if it's comfortable, who cares how it looks? Okay, guys, it's time. No experience or game segment this week. We will have that on the next week's episode. What we will cover, though, the rant. And like I said at the outset, there's 2 this week. Let's start things off with the first, Magic Leap. Imagine with me, guys. Just huddle in a little bit, okay? Let me have a sip first. There we go. Huddle in. Let me paint a picture, okay? We are in a state-of-the-art gymnasium. If you're not familiar with that word, think of it almost like being at the Staples Center or, some kind of NBA arena. An immaculate gym floor in front of us, maybe 15, 20 feet, okay? We're huddled around this, and we are using the latest, greatest hitherto unknown Magic Leap technology. And we sit and wait. And we look at that gym floor, and then we hear the rumble, guys. The seats that we're in, well, they're hooked up to rumble and make the experience that much more immersive. We kind of look over to each other. We're all in agreement. We can feel the rumble. The anticipation is building. And then we see a whale, an actual, magnificently large and beautiful whale, pop up out of the gymnasium floor, which now parts like liquid water. Not only does the whale crest out of the water, but splashes back in. We can almost feel the water hit our faces. That, guys, was the Magic Leap demo we were presented with a few years ago now. Are you excited? Are you excited? Good. Because here's what we actually got. Huddle around. Okay? You probably feel something under your seat. Go ahead, grab it. It's a lump of clay. What does this mean, Epics? I'll tell you what it means. Take your lump, guys. I don't want this thing perfectly round and smooth. Just kind of lumpify it a little bit more. Toss it onto that gymnasium floor. Hell, we can't afford a gymnasium. Toss it onto the couch in your man cave, your home theater. And come on, everybody. Toss it onto the couch. We've got a lump of it now. Roll the demo. This, ladies and gentlemen, is $2.3 billion. Okay, maybe not. Maybe occlusion is not taken into account. And guys, we can probably give them that, right? 2.3 billion. If a lot of other things fall in line, we can give them that the processing power to make occlusion actually work in real time is probably super techno prohibitive. It's not going to happen. But does it still gotta look like this at the end of the day? That's the problem I have with Magic Leap. This was supposed to be the demo to inspire us. Guys, it didn't do a lot of inspiring. In fact, the three hosts of the show itself didn't look convinced. They looked like they had PTSD, like they were purposely aware of what the reaction was going to be. And what it was. One of utter and absolute shock and disbelief that this was the demo that they came up with after promising the beauty of the whale. Where to from here, guys? Well, I suppose you could look at this as rock bottom. Or perhaps clay golem bottom. And if it is the bottom, well, they can only go up. Let's just hope it doesn't take another 2.3 billion to do so. And then this beauty. We've seen negative articles before. Many a time we see the doom and gloom prophecies of virtual reality. It's a gimmick like 3D, right? We see it time and time again. So it's no surprise to me that Digital Trends runs this story from Joshua Fruhlinger, where he used sales data from Amazon via a third party, and that third party is an organization called Thinkium, and somehow cobbled together that virtual reality is dead. Look, I could pick this apart 10 ways to Tuesday. There is some truth in it, okay? But forget about the truth. And I'm not saying embrace the lie or the wish or the hope. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying let's assume that VR isn't doing as well as we'd hope. I think it's safe to say that's actually the reality. Is it dying? No. Will it die? I don't think so. And I maintain the reason is the genie is out of the bottle. The aspect of VR that is suffering right now is gaming. And unfortunately, gaming is the biggest draw to virtual reality. But it's all those other things that virtual reality does so frickin' well. Like allowing doctors to look at cancerous tumors in whole new ways, to virtually enter a patient without actually doing it, and in such a way that a 2D image on a monitor just can't recreate. That's the power of VR, allowing you to simulate, train, experience realities in a way that no other technology can. That genie is not going anywhere near the bottle. It's out. Expect these doldrums to last even longer. Expect more negative stories. Expect additional vendors to go out of business. Not just directly vendors of head-mounted displays, but companies that do support things. Maybe it's covers for HMDs, cables, wireless adapters, the game devs themselves, on and on and on. We're going to get through this. And all we need to do as early adopters is just keep that hope and determination alive. Don't stop showing VR to people when they visit your house. Don't stop purchasing VR games. Lulls are natural. I took many months off. Skyrim VR got me right back in with its mod support. It's amazing to walk around in Skyrim in this open world with texture packs enabled on an 8-year-old engine, 7-year-old engine. Well, 8, because it was developed years before the game was released. It's able to run so fast on modern hardware that when you add all those nice eye candy things that sure might not look as great on a monitor, but look absolutely fantastic in VR, and at a frame rate that you don't have to have a 1080. Hell, 1050s run it, R9 290s run it. Yeah, things are not doom and gloom. They're not fantastic, but VR is not going anywhere. Guys, that is it for the Epics Rant. That's it for this first episode of the VR show. Let me know in the comments below if you've got suggestions for content for next week's show. Otherwise, expect it to follow a similar format, but with the addition of some VR games and experiences that I'll cover. Guys, as always, have a kick-arse Game and Friday and a fantastic weekend, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers.